What have you done? Apologize to Grandma. My mother-in-law had prepared a homemade cake for us when we visited. However, my 4-year-old daughter knocked it off without saying a word. Despite scolding her, my daughter kept her mouth shut and turned away. Then, she pointed at the memorial photo.
But Grandpa said if we eat it, we'll die.
I gasped at my daughter's words, knowing she had a mysterious power. What followed were revelations that began my terrifying experience. My name is Emily. My daughter Julia has a mysterious power. I noticed it when she started speaking. Looking back, Julia often waved and smiled at empty spaces as a baby. As she grew older and started walking and talking, she began acting as if she were playing with invisible friends.
She's just a child, talking to imaginary friends as part of her play.
My husband initially didn't think much of it. However, as Julia grew, her strange behavior intensified.
Dad, you secretly ate chocolate last night, didn't you?
What? What are you talking about?
You shouldn't do that. The doctor will get mad at you.
This happened when my husband was consciously avoiding sweets after being told his blood sugar was high during a health checkup.
I know where you hid it.
When I checked the back of the shelf Julia pointed to, there was indeed a box of expensive chocolates. Did you eat all of this at once? That's not good.
Sorry. Julia, how did you know? I thought it was hidden perfectly.
Julia, looking a bit proud, said.
Grandma told me.
Then she smiled at the empty space beside her, saying,
We did it.
Who's Grandma?
Mom's mom, of course.
But it was just the three of us. My husband, Julia, and me. My mother had passed away before Julia was born.
Grandma died from an illness, so she's worried about Dad.
My mother, whom she should never have met. The sweets she shouldn't have known about unless told. These things happened so often that by this time, both my husband and I had come to think of them as part of Julia's unique personality. If she said something existed, even if we couldn't see or hear it, we believed it was true. However, one thing that worried me was that Julia's interactions with unseen entities allowed her to see through other people's lies. Having one's secrets exposed is troublesome for others. There were people who didn't think well of Julia because of this, and there would undoubtedly be more in the future. Sometimes, even among those close to Julia.
Julia, come play with me and Emily over here.
No, I want to play with Grandpa and the big sister.
Whenever we visited my husband's family, Julia always went straight to her grandfather. He always welcomed her warmly and played with her happily, but
Who is this big sister she keeps talking about? Who's supposed to be there?
among the relatives, only my mother-in-law, Kaylee, was negative towards Julia. At the beginning of our marriage, she treated us normally as relatives, but her attitude began to change gradually after Julia was born. She became somewhat distant towards both my husband and me, and especially avoided contact with Julia. Perhaps because of this, Julia never warmed up to Kaylee, even as she grew older.
Grandma is scary.
That's all she would say, and she wouldn't tell me more. I think Julia couldn't open her heart because Kaylee didn't acknowledge her world. On the other hand, Kaylee probably didn't like Julia's strange behavior or the fact that her husband adored Julia so much. Kaylee feels like she's lost her place as the most important person to her husband. It might be a bit childish, but it's understandable. My in-laws were known as the handsome couple among those around them. Despite being in her late 60s, Kaylee was so beautiful that she could be mistaken for being in her 40s, and my father-in-law had very refined features. Beautiful parents have beautiful children. My husband's features closely resembled his father's when he was young. As someone working at a beauty clinic, I was eager to learn Kaylee's beauty secrets.
I don't do anything special. Maybe it's because my husband always tells me I'm beautiful.
I thought my in-laws were a couple who respected each other and got along well. Having a grandchild might have made her feel like she's no longer the most important person to her husband, and that might make her feel lonely. Whenever Kaylee was harsh to Julia, I would step in between them and try to convince myself of this. I received the news of my father-in-law's passing just after Julia turned 4. The cause was electrocution. That day, my father-in-law had been unusually drunk and, after bathing, sleepily plugged in a hairdryer with wet hands. It was so sudden that Kaylee was deeply shocked.
I don't want to see anyone for a while. I look terrible.
At the funeral, Kaylee's face seemed older than usual. For a while, she didn't let anyone visit and didn't see us either. But after about a month, she seemed to have calmed down and started seeing people again. After that, my husband and I resumed our visits to my in-laws' house.
I can't stay depressed forever. He would be sad.
Kaylee said this with her usual bright and beautiful face, which was reassuring. However, the issue between Kaylee and Julia remained unresolved. Usually, when we visited, Julia would play alone in my father-in-law's room. Or rather, she enjoyed playing with my father-in-law, who she seemed to see. But sometimes, Julia would say strange things to Kaylee without any warning.
Grandma, you used magic again.
Magic? What are you talking about?
Grandpa said you're a witch. That's why you're always beautiful.
Grandpa is no longer here.
Every time Julia mentioned her grandfather, Kaylee would become irritable, making my husband and me nervous.
Maybe we should stop taking Julia to see Mom.
He said, but Julia, who loved her grandfather, always wanted to visit her in-laws' house to see him, so we couldn't bring ourselves to stop. One day, surprisingly, Kaylee contacted my husband.
I'm baking the cake you and your father loved. Come visit.
My husband was delighted to hear this. Kaylee was good at baking, and her pound cakes were said to be exceptional. Even disliked vegetables and bad-tasting fruits became delicious when Kaylee made them into pound cakes. Our family loves sweets, so Julia was excited and even smiled at Kaylee that day.
Welcome. I've been waiting for you.
When we arrived at my in-laws' house, the cakes were already baked. Carrot, spinach, tea, apple. The colorful pound cakes looked like they were from a store. Wow! Did you make all of these, Kaylee?
Wow! Nostalgic. I overcame my dislike of vegetables with ease.
As we talked, Julia brought a small plate and started serving the cake. Hey, Julia. Wash your hands first.
This is for Grandpa.
She said and took the cake to my father-in-law's room. This is bad. Kaylee will be upset, I thought, glancing at Kaylee, but she was smiling at Julia that day.
Emily, please help yourself before it gets cold.
Encouraged by Kaylee, we served ourselves some cake. Just as we were about to eat, suddenly, with a loud crash, my cake was knocked to the floor. Before I could react, my husband's plate met the same fate. It took me a moment to realize that Julia, with a serious expression, was knocking all the cakes off the table onto the floor.
What? What are you doing? Stop it!
By the time I said that, it was too late. All the cakes were ruined.
What have you done? Apologize to Kaylee.
I had overlooked most of Julia's strange behavior until now, but this time I was genuinely angry. However, Julia just turned away silently. Then, glaring at Kaylee, she muttered,
Grandma is a bad witch. It's a magic cake.
My husband also scolded her.
Enough! Mom made this for us.
Julia, now tearful, eventually cried out.
I want to go home.
Kaylee, I'm really sorry. I'll talk to her strictly later. It's okay.
Kaylee responded calmly to my desperate apologies.
Maybe she didn't like the flavors. I'll make a different one next time, maybe chocolate or something she'll enjoy more. She's excited, so it's better to go home today. I'll send some with my son next time.
Kaylee began cleaning up the cakes. As we were getting ready to leave, Julia quietly approached me and whispered,
Grandpa said so.
When I looked up in surprise, Julia was pointing towards my father-in-law's room, where his memorial photo was displayed. Once we got home, my husband and I decided to ask Julia about what had happened.
Julia, why did you do that? Tell me.
I was confused and exhausted at that moment.
Why do you dislike Grandma so much?
As I spoke, my anger and confusion turned to sadness. Seeing my expression, Julia quietly began to speak while looking down.
Because Grandpa said if we ate it, we would die.
What?
According to Julia, when she placed the cake in front of the memorial photo, her grandfather looked at her sadly, so she talked to him.
It's true. Grandpa told me. He said there's poison in it.
Why would Grandma do such a thing?
I thought I was used to Julia's stories, but hearing this in the current situation left me at a loss for words.
You don't believe me.
Seeing my skeptical expression, Julia looked sad.
Grandpa is always crying and angry.
She muttered and then fell silent. That night, my husband and I stayed up late discussing Julia. We were both concerned that if she continued to use her ability to see unseen things to hurt others, it would be problematic.
But she's a unique child, Not one to say such things as a prank or joke.
His words made me realize something. Julia had never done anything to trample on someone else's kindness. If we, as her parents, didn't stand by her, she would be isolated. I reconsidered my stance. Moreover, thinking back, Kaylee's attitude at that time felt off. She didn't get angry at Julia's clearly bad behavior. She just smiled calmly. Considering their relationship, it was strange.
If what Julia is saying is true, we might find something if we investigate the house.
My husband looked troubled, but he also wanted to know the truth about his parents. We decided to investigate together. 2 days later, we visited my in-laws' house again and apologized to Kaylee. As an apology and a gesture of filial piety from my husband, we gifted her a week-long trip. She was delighted with the suggested tourist spots and foods she liked. Kaylee dressed up and left in high spirits. Taking advantage of her absence, we searched the house. If we found nothing, it would just be Julia's prank or misunderstanding. Both my husband and I hoped that would be the case this time. However, our hopes were quickly shattered.
Why? Why did Mom do this?
Seeing my husband break down in tears was heart-wrenching. I resolved that Kaylee must be held accountable for her actions. On the day Kaylee was to return, my husband, Julia, and I waited at the in-laws' house.
It was a nice change of pace. Thank you.
She handed us souvenirs, looking even more beautiful than before.
Oh, Julia, are you drawing?
Feeling good, Kaylee spoke brightly to Julia.
Yes. This is Grandpa and Grandma.
Hearing Julia's response, Kaylee's smile froze. The sketchbook showed a crying man and a woman with an evil grin. I quickly sent Julia to her grandfather's room and apologized. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Don't worry about it.
For a while, we engaged in casual conversation, but suddenly, we heard Julia's cheerful voice coming from my father-in-law's room. She was probably having fun playing with him again.
Emily, don't you think it's time to stop that?
Do you think so? Kaylee sighed in exasperation.
As a parent, you're quite laid back. That child is already 4 years old, right? If she keeps living in her imagination, people will start looking at her strangely.
That's part of Julia's personality. Besides, sometimes she reveals unexpected truths. Then, my husband and I took out some documents from our bags. These were life insurance policies taken out on my father-in-law. We spread out dozens of them on the table.
What's this? Did you clean up or something?
Feigning ignorance, Kaylee didn't seem particularly flustered by the documents. These are life insurance policies taken out on my father-in-law. Isn't this a bit too much?
Is it? I'm a housewife, after all. I wanted to make sure I wouldn't be in trouble if I ended up alone. My husband agreed too.
Would a typical housewife take out life insurance policies from over 10 companies on her husband? I also took out a large number of receipts for cosmetic surgery and beauty treatments. Cosmetic surgery? Laser treatment for spots, wrinkle improvement treatments. You did these even less than a month after my father-in-law passed away. No wonder you looked even more beautiful recently.
Oh, it's just a little interest. Modern cosmetic surgery is amazing. You can get double eyelids in a day.
Despite our attempts to corner her, Kaylee remained unfazed.
Don't you have anything to say to us?
Growing impatient, my husband looked serious.
What's wrong with you two today? Something's off.
Seeing Kaylee tilt her head in confusion, my husband sighed and took out an album. At this point, Kaylee's face finally showed a hint of tension.
Where did you get that? I thought I threw it away.
I found it in Dad's closet.
He flipped through the pages. The album had several parts crudely blacked out with a marker, as if someone wanted to erase a person from the records. It was likely that these parts contained old photos of Kaylee. Full body procedures must have cost a lot for both the surgery and maintenance. I muttered, and Kaylee sighed deeply.
This is troublesome.
Judging by her tone, Kaylee was quite angry at this point.
Everyone has a past they don't want to talk about, right? So what? What are you trying to say with this interrogation? If you have something to say, just say it.
She glared at me, and I looked straight back at her. Did you take out large insurance policies on my father-in-law and kill him to fund your cosmetic surgeries? Kaylee frowned at my accusation. I expected her to get more upset, but surprisingly, she laughed softly and leaned on her hand, looking confident.
You've been watching too many crime dramas. This proves nothing. There's no way I would harm my husband.
She brushed aside the documents we had presented.
I only took out insurance to be safe if I ended up alone. I've always paid for my surgeries with my own money. What's wrong with that?
Seeing Kaylee's attitude, as if she had done nothing wrong, my husband looked like he was about to cry.
What do you think this is?
With that, he quietly presented the final piece of evidence.
What is this?
This is the ingredient list of the cake you made last week.
Terms like diphenochrome and zinc phosphide were listed, which would be incomprehensible to a layperson.
What? Cake? Did you rummage through the trash?
Yes. I didn't want to do this, but...
Hearing this, Kaylee looked at him with disgust.
Several toxic substances were detected in the cake. They match the contents of this.
He threw an empty box of rat poison on the table. This box was also found in the trash at the in-laws' house. My husband, who works at a technical university, had taken a small sample of the cake from the kitchen trash and asked a colleague at the university to analyze it. The results confirmed Julia's statement that the cake was poisoned was true.
Why did you try to make us eat this?
Even as he tearfully questioned her, Kaylee remained silent.
Was Dad's death really an accident?
It's that child's fault.
Suddenly, without any context, Kaylee muttered.
That child. She called me a witch in front of my husband. I never wanted him to find out.
Kaylee explained that it all started when she overheard a conversation between Julia and her husband. Julia somehow knew about Kaylee's past cosmetic surgeries and mentioned it in front of her husband. Knowing her past made Kaylee want to erase everything.
It's truly infuriating. That child is a devil. She exposed my secret and tried to take my husband. Because of her, he stopped loving me.
Hearing Kaylee insult Julia, I felt a surge of anger, but my husband shouted first.
You tried to poison Julia. And us too. Why, Mom? You weren't like this before.
What do you know? You, who were born with a beautiful face.
Kaylee's face twisted with rage, making her look almost terrifying. Concerns about one's appearance can be so severe that they affect a person's entire life. The desire to be beautiful and loved by others can lead to tragic outcomes. I've seen many people suffer because of this, but I've never seen someone harm others because of it. When I said this, Kaylee turned on me and grabbed my collar.
He married me, had children with me, praised my cooking, and spoke kind words to me, all because of my beautiful face.
As Kaylee continued to shout, I quietly spoke. Kaylee, you're mistaken.
What?
It was your husband who called you a witch. Julia was just repeating what she heard.
What are you talking about? Don't be ridiculous. He would never call me that.
I gently handed Kaylee a photograph.
What? Is this me?
The photo showed a young Kaylee. The surface was slightly smudged, but the back had a handwritten date and Kaylee's name. It was clear this was Kaylee before her cosmetic surgeries.
How is this here? I thought I erased all of these.
It was in your husband's diary. He knew about your surgeries. I took out a diary and read from it. It mentioned finding Kaylee's old album, being curious about the blacked out parts, and discovering that the old Kaylee was just as lovely as the current one. The diary was filled with his thoughts about his wife. He wrote, "She is like a witch from a story, turning bitter vegetables and sour fruits into sweet cakes. Kaylee is my pride. There's no mention of not loving her." I handed the diary to Kaylee, but she let it fall to the floor and collapsed to her knees. From then on, she only muttered,
It's a lie. But
Why that cake? It was a precious memory for us.
My husband was the most heartbroken by this. The cake his mother made, which he loved since childhood, was used as a tool for crime.
I've submitted this evidence to the police and reported it. I will never forgive you for trying to harm my family.
He said quietly, his eyes filled with tears.
He's watching.
The sudden voice from behind startled everyone present, and they turned around. There stood Julia, who had been in her grandfather's room just moments ago, holding a sketchbook.
Grandpa is watching.
Julia opened the sketchbook and showed it to Kaylee.
Ah!
Seeing the drawing, both Kaylee and I gasped. It depicted a monstrous figure in the shape of a human.
He's become like this. Right, Grandma?
Julia then stared intently behind Kaylee. Kaylee quickly turned around and screamed at the empty space. After that, Kaylee was taken away by the police officers who had arrived. She was extremely frightened and could barely speak even after arriving at the police station. She huddled in a corner of the room, repeatedly muttering,
He's watching!
Her once beautiful appearance was gone, and her deeply wrinkled face looked like that of a witch who had lived for hundreds of years. In the end, we couldn't find definitive evidence regarding my father-in-law, but considering her reaction at that time and her subsequent behavior, it was clear. Thinking about it was terrifying, so we stopped investigating further. Julia, who was small at the time, is now in elementary school and enjoys her days. Her mysterious abilities remain, and she still occasionally sees things that others cannot. However, her friends do not find her creepy or scary.
Everyone comes to see the people they want to meet. Grandpa is always watching us.
Julia says this with a smile, staring at the empty space.
How did you like this story? Please subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.